Today you will discover what is psychological safety and why we all want to have it in our teams. Hi, I'm Monika Chutnik, and I help leaders learn how to lead their international and virtual teams. Together with my team in EDTA Leadership and Culture, we make the change happen by means of training, coaching, or facilitation. This podcast, A Step Ahead, has been created for all who want to grow in such an international, remote environment, who want to grow as leaders, as HR, as change agents, and simply as humans. I will be delighted to know that you make progress at work in life. All recordings and materials are available at www.astepahead.pro. I wish you a sense of fun and discovery. In this episode, I'm talking to Katarzyna Romanowicz, an experienced leadership trainer and consultant, about psychological safety in business and in teams. Listening to the conversation, you will learn about why to care about psychological safety with a specific, striking business case. What does psychological safety comprise of? What are the stages of psychological safety? Maybe the levels of psychological safety. What you can do as a leader to ensure or to increase psychological safety in your team, and also what leadership skills are helpful for enabling psychological safety in your team. So this episode might be interesting both for leaders who have a direct influence on psychological safety in their teams, but also for HR, who designs development programs and policies. And when you listen to this episode, please think about a person who would really enjoy what we discuss with Katarzyna here, who would really benefit from listening to it. And you might want to share it with this person later on. Today we're talking about the topic of psychological safety. When I first heard this topic, I somehow felt very good about it. And perhaps it's the safety that rang a bell. And then I discovered that we actually talk about a layer of leadership and a team that contributes to team creativity and performance. So today I have with me Katarzyna Romanowicz, who will be able to tell us much more about what psychological safety is and how to get it in your team. Hello, good morning, Kasia.
Hello, good morning, Monika. Thank you for inviting me here. So, yes, psychological safety is a topic that might make you and everyone around feel good, as you said. Myself, I've been a trainer and consultant for leaders for almost 20 years now. I've been working in international and in hybrid setting. And I noticed that recently, this topic of having people contribute to the team, of having people feel comfortable enough to either present their ideas or even turn their cameras on in some cases in team meetings, that this topic has really become important for many of our clients. I've been cooperating with EDTA Leadership and Culture for quite a long time, so we have a lot of experience with global and hybrid teams. And I think that this topic is really important because it is tangible. It is not something that is so obvious in hybrid teams. And we will, I think, go back to that tangibility of psychological safety later on.
If we start from the first point, why to care about psychological safety at all? Why would we want to have it in teams?
I think that you can find some really good examples in many places in the internet and in literature. For me, that really striking example was actually in my free time when I wanted to watch a movie in the evening, on a Friday evening, and we chose Downfall, the case against Boeing. So actually, it's a very short Netflix series. I think there's like 4 episodes, and it is a series that shows this really impressive example of what happens when psychological safety is not there. So basically, it starts with the crashes of 2 planes, quite recent crashes. They happened in October 2018 and in March 2019. these were really brand new Boeings that crashed right after takeoffs. And there was a very long investigation to realize what were the root causes of those crashes. And there was a system installed in those planes that caused the faulty nose diving automation. And it required the pilots to react really quickly in like 8 to 10 seconds to stop this system from turning on. And of course, nobody was able to do that. And also, that was not the root cause of those crashes, that this system was faulty. The root cause of those crashes was that the Boeing company decided not to give the pilots the training on that system. So they didn't describe it in the documentation as something totally new, but rather as a modification to the previous system. And that was what allowed them not to sell those planes with required training, a training required by law, which would make the planes very, very expensive. So, that was looking for the profit. And also the employees of Boeing that were investigated during this whole trial, they admitted that during the years, and this is where we touch upon psychological safety, that as years went by, the company culture moved, it changed in the wrong direction. So the profit margin was becoming more and more important, and it wasn't safe for the employees anymore to talk about some wrongdoings, to be the whistleblowers that would say, okay, but this is the wrong direction. We shouldn't do that for the safety reasons, for example. So it happened more and more often that those whistleblowers, those who reported some engineering mistakes or minor problems or things like, hey, maybe we should give those pilots their training, they were silenced, they were even fired. So as you can see, it was not a good climate for psychological safety. People preferred rather to remain silent than to say, hey, something was wrong, or to say something like, hey, we could do it in another way. And this documentary shows that if you don't have psychological safety in your team, in your organization, things can really go wrong. Here, it was a case of death of more than 300 people, the passengers of those planes, but also the profit and the penalty that the organization had to pay was also at stake, of course. So for me, that was a really, vivid example of what can go wrong. There's also examples of other situations, like, for example, medical mistakes at hospitals, which happen when, for example, the nurse is afraid to question the orders of the doctor, and so on and so on. So these are the vivid examples, but also in less life-threatening situations, things can go in the wrong direction if people don't feel psychologically safe in your team. So, that was like, the documentary was the moment when I thought, wow, that's really an important topic, and it sort of encompasses what our clients talk about and what they report they have challenges with in the recent situation.
So this sounds for me as if it was a great measure for preventing catastrophes from happening. How does it combine with the creativity that I heard about previously?
Generally, we speak about the definition of psychological safety. It is about a belief. Actually, it's a belief that people in a team have, that the team is safe, that you can take the risk. And taking a risk is one of the components of creativity, right? You need to go beyond that box. You need to think out of the box, which of course is not 100% safe. It's something that requires a risk. So if you have some level of confidence that your team, that your boss will not embarrass you, reject you, or punish you for speaking up, that's what psychological safety. And as we talk, and you mentioned, Monika, this topic of creativity, that's also what creativity is about. So either not to care about people, rejecting you or punishing you, but there's maybe not many people who are as strong as that. Maybe someone who has
They become individual creators, not team players.
Become individual creators, exactly. So that's, let's say, ambience or climate where people feel comfortable being themselves, when they feel they will not feel rejected for being themselves. As we are talking, you can hear probably that there's many more doors that are opening, a door to diversity, a door to an inclusion, a door to creativity, and so on. So psychological safety, it's something really important. And again, it's a belief that, of course, based on facts that members of your team have, that it is okay to speak up, to be themselves, that they will not be, punished for it.
It also does ring a bell of belonging, the feeling of belonging to the team. I think nowadays in virtual and hybrid teams, it's a big topic. Can you be yourself?
Yes.
Do you really belong to the team? So that seems to be very interesting. But I wonder, to what extent is this really tangible? If it's a belief, it seems to be a bit fuzzy now. How could we translate it into some specific observables?
If something seems fuzzy, as you say, it might also seem overwhelming, right? How to make my team psychologically safe. It sounds like a great philosophical idea, and many people might think, well, I'm not really up to it. It's too big for me. So here, what might come helpful is that concept of Timothy R. Clark, who wrote about the 4 stages of psychological safety. So maybe if I quote those, this will become more tangible. So the first layer of psychological safety, the first stage, is the inclusion. So you feel safe to be yourself. You are accepted for who you are. It's including your attributes, your characteristics, and it is a level that sounds very basic, very fundamental, but even that level is sometimes a challenge in many organizations. For example, for many women, it might be a challenge to be themselves in some industries, right? It might be really, really difficult to be thinking in a different way, and to show that you are thinking in another way than your colleagues in some other industries. So that's really fundamental. It's like accepting the team members for who they are. So that's the inclusion stage.
I fully support what you say. Many organizations in this part of Europe are making themselves busy with managing diversity, like trying to suck in enough candidates with enough characteristics of a certain type. But in fact, the diversity does not give any psychological safety itself at all if it's not combined with inclusion. Only inclusion gives the most basic level of psychological safety. So I think that's a strong message to any organization that wants to deal with it. Thank you.
Yeah, that's stage 1. That's like the fundamentals, the really fundamental level. From there, you can go to stage 2, which is learner safety. So if your organization or your team is at that level, then you feel safe to exchange, to ask questions, to receive feedback, to experiment, to make mistakes. And if it sounded easy, then maybe at this moment when we said making mistakes, it might have started to sound a bit challenging to some of our listeners, because, well, what do you think, Monika? I think that making mistakes is also something that's in our part of Europe is not so obvious.
It's not very much welcome. When you go to school, what you are shown is not your successes, but your mistakes. So yeah. That's something that you really want to avoid. That's something that you're very sensitive about.
Fortunately, what I noticed when we talk to our clients at the leadership and at culture is that in many organizations there's even some sort of procedures and onboarding procedures that enable that learner safety for quite a long time. That, for example, you have a buddy or you have a mentor with whom you can exchange and ask the most stupid questions. There's a platform, like a trial platform on which you can learn before actually, putting some important stuff into the actual system. So I think that it is something that is being consciously developed by many organizations. But again, it is not obvious.
Theoretically, the agile approach with the retrospectives, looking back at what happened and learning from the mistakes is fitting perfectly the learning approach that you're mentioning.
Yes, I think that that the agile approach is generally developed. I'm not sure if around the concept of psychological safety, but that concept of psychological safety is central to agile, because you don't have agile without psychological safety, at least at that stage. And then you have stage 3, which is contributor safety. And here is the famous, they are not being proactive part, because the contributor safety is that you sort of feel like making a contribution to your team. You feel that okay, maybe if I add this touch to this project, it will feel better, and I will not be, punished for adding this touch to the project. So, for example, rephrasing the bullet points in a presentation event, that could be this one, or asking the team, well, how about if we additionally did this and that, right? So that's also what retrospectives are about in to a large extent.
So the way I understand the difference between level 2 and level 3 of psychological safety is that in level 2, mistakes happen and you learn from the mistakes. But in level 3, that's a one step further. You are invited to take action, to take the initiative, and propose something. Yes, that's what you're saying.
Yes, you are invited, or you feel invited, because it's also the general, feeling that you have in the team that it is okay to do so, and it doesn't necessarily have to happen by other people telling you, okay, so why don't you add something here? But you feel safe enough to say, okay, I will add something here. So that's level 3. And there's stage 4, which is, let's say, the utmost level of psychological safety, according to Timothy Clark. That's the challenger safety. So you don't only feel safe enough to make mistakes, to add something from yourself to the team, to contribute to the team, but you also feel safe enough to challenge. To challenge, for example, your more experienced colleague to say something like, that might be wrong, or I think about it in a different way. Or you can even challenge your boss, which is also quite difficult. Also from the intercultural perspective, that might be very difficult to some teams. So that's about the challenging. That is the 4th stage of psychological safety, according to that author. But you need to have the 3 previous ones to have people challenge, according to that concept, of course. But I think there's a lot of truth in it.
Absolutely. What I'm thinking, it's really strong, The saying directly to your boss, I don't agree with you. Well, it might come a little bit frontal, conflicting. But there might be other ways to express that, which also would enable this psychological safety. Like, let's look at other points of view, or I also would add my own opinion to that. Something which is not, staying in direct contradiction to what the other person said, but just adding your point of view, which is a contradiction in itself. But that's where the interesting discussion starts. That's really where we start tapping into the benefits of diversity, we can say.
Yes, that's true. Because if you just have a diverse team and everybody is sitting in their box, then, what's the benefit of it? But if you have
there is no use of it.
If you have a diverse team that feels safe enough to exchange, to make mistakes, to say something, from my perspective, from my experience in a totally different industry, we had something similar. And if you want to contradict, saying something like, from my perspective, even from the perspective of my social group, this will not work very well, then you have the benefits from diversity. So again, we have, we discovered that Agile and psychological safety have a lot in common, and of course diversity and inclusion and psychological safety do have a lot in common as well. So these are, I think, quite important messages.
So just to summarize, the level 1 is about I feel accepted as a person, I feel included in the team. The level 2 is we can all learn from the mistakes, not punish. That's the point. The level 3 is I can actively contribute and propose some changes or improvements. The level 3, yes, and the level 4 is I can even contradict or oppose somebody with a contradicting view, so that we increase the scope of our understanding of a situation. Lovely.
Yes, and I think it can also be relieving to some of our listeners because you don't have to go to that stage 4 directly. It's something that develops step by step. If you feel that maybe my team doesn't feel that psychologically safe as I would like it to, then you need to check the stage 1, 2, and 3, and then go to stage 4.
Okay. And this also tells me many leaders that we work with would like their teams their team members to propose to
be proactive.
Yes, to actively propose changes, upgrades, improvements, but they coincidentally forgot about the feeling of inclusion in the first place, about the social bond that connects people together. So it's like you can't really get the level 4 if you haven't covered the 3 ones before. But but on the other hand, starting from inclusion seems to be the basics for everything. So the human skills and the human spirit here.
Yes, the human spirit, and actually, it is about the human spirit. Again, something that might sound fuzzy or intangible, but this is something that Google concluded when they held a very large project that was called the Project Aristotle. Google, as a global organization, they found out, of course, that within their organizations there were some teams which were really good. They were performing very well, and also people wanted to belong to those teams. And there were some other teams globally where you had that, maybe not performing so well, or maybe not so perfect, or people wouldn't stay in those teams for very long. So that it was, I think, in 2012 or slightly later. Can't remember the exact date, but they launched the Project Aristotle. So they researched the actual characteristics of those perfect teams. They tried to find out what was the combination of the traits of people, of the leader of the team that made up the high-performing team. So, like, what combination do you need? Do you need just extroverts or introverts, or do you need people with, degree in social sciences combined with people with a degree in engineering? Or maybe you need someone who has just arrived from a different industry. And I think you can go into the details of that research, but they always do it.
The science of leadership and top performance teams. I love it. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And what they found out, and that was their first what discovery, was that who is on that team, like what characteristics they have, it didn't matter at all. It didn't matter if you had a leader with a degree, with an MBA, or if you had a leader with just, secondary education. It didn't matter if you had just women or just men or whoever. What mattered was the team norms. So what mattered was the team norms about many things. And then, of course, they started the second wave of that research, what those team norms are. And generally, to cut the long story short, the most important team norms they found were 2. The first one was that everyone got a chance to talk and was invited to talk, to contribute. Yeah, so that's even the level 3 of our psychological safety. So those teams, they didn't allow for a situation that's, I think, quite frequent in many teams, that you have like a team of 10 people and there's 2 or 3 who always contribute and always speak up in the meetings, and the rest just says, okay, or they don't do anything, right? So the high-performing teams were the ones when everyone was invited to speak up in a way that was safe to them. That rule about everybody getting a chance to talk seems to be really important. And, you might ask yourself, all right, but sometimes there's those people who don't want to contribute, particularly in online meetings. You don't even know if they are there. And it seems that it's really important to invite them, maybe not necessarily to talk, but to add their view, to add their opinion, because if there's only one person who spoke, who contributed all the time, or a small group of people, then, Google says in the reports from the research that the collective intelligence declined. It sounds fuzzy to me, but probably that's what they mean by a team performing in not, the optimal
I
way.
get it. I get it. Intelligence is about the number of options which you have. So if you only let to speak, let's say 3 or 5 people out of 10, then half of your potential intelligence is unavailable. So you cannot tap into it. That's what I'm thinking. It really makes me think about this virtual and hybrid context that sometimes, this feeling of being included in a face-to-face setup, it happens through the body language, through the eye contact, through just, a leader noticing you, other people noticing you, sometimes you nodding your head, and sometimes it might be enough for the teams to feel bond together. But in a virtual setup, it just becomes extreme. If you do not explicitly ask people to contribute, they become quiet and excluded. That's how it goes.
Exactly. And you also touched upon the other very important norm of those teams, which is also tricky in online environments. So the researchers call it the average social sensitivity. So people in those good teams, they sort of feel how others feel, and they base it on the tone of voice, on the expression, on non-verbal cues, and then they act in an adequate way. So if they feel that their colleague feels sad, they will not, go around and try to make fun of everything. They will sort of stay with that sadness for a moment and then synchronize
emotionally.
Yeah, exactly. So as you can see, this is even more tricky in virtual team, because you in a virtual setting, you don't see someone with their sad face. And I mean, it's not as obvious and immediate as in the office.
But I'm thinking, well, a challenge which I frequently meet when I run trainings about smart collaboration, virtual and hybrid teams, is that leaders usually don't seem to care. They don't seem to be convinced. They say, like, I am in touch with every member of the team, so what else should I care about? And that's precisely the rule number 2 that they should care about. The rule of people being involved in an interaction together, in the social feeling together, in watching each other together, in being a group together. So that's something that I sometimes I sometimes find a lot of resistance in leaders. They seem not to notice this layer of teams, people in team collaborating with each other, not only each of them separately with a leader.
Yes, and on the other hand, I find that some of our clients or potential clients seem to know what it is about. So they ask about, the inclusion, they ask about how to run empathetic conversations in the virtual setting, how to use communication. And I think there's like two approaches. But I think that this layer can easily be omitted because you don't see it in the virtual environment. But I think as it comes to our team at ESTA Leadership and Culture, we've done quite a good job to do that, haven't we? I mean, it's like watering and caring for a garden. You cannot stop it, but I think we are quite okay with that. Don't you think, Monika?
Yes, challenging each other does happen. So so maybe that's
Yes.
But it never is easy. I would say it's always a little bit of a stress to make your point or to say something opposite to the other person. I find it stressful, but we still manage to do that. So that's I think that's a good point.
I think if I look in retrospective on how we've built this feeling of psychological safety, I don't know what stage we are on all the time, but for sure we do challenge each other, is that also in our asynchronous communication, we share, like we say to the group, to the team that, for example, we feel fine or we feel overwhelmed or we have a difficult situation at home that makes us feel this and that way. So if we share it, like as, let's say, senior members of the team, then the others feel that it is okay to share that too. So because you need to share at least that emoji with a sad face, to show that you are not in the best of moods or that you need a break or whatever. And I think that maybe it is not perfect yet, but it is transparent that it is okay to do that, to say that, well, maybe we feel a little bit overwhelmed, or or that something doesn't really convince us.
That's what I'm thinking. Over time, we also seem to know each other well enough to understand what kind of inputs come from which person. So that's something which is awaited and which is anxiously awaited at the same time. For example, I frequently come in with some detailed questions or with some analytical approach. And on the one hand, we benefit from this as a team. On the other hand, sometimes it's just too much of it, and it's a question of keeping the right balance, but also getting the feedback of each other. So I think that's how it works.
Yes, getting the feedback of each other. I think that's also really very, very important. So I think that we also spend some time either synchronously or asynchronously talking about personal stuff, and it's also okay, and it shows that we can be humans, that we also have that psychological part in ourselves. So I think that's also important. And yeah, and I think we've developed some mechanisms to give everyone a chance to talk. I mean, sometimes people do feel overwhelmed by a statement or by knowledge that somebody brings in, but I think they are always invited this way or another.
I'm also thinking about the feedback which we got after some new team members joined. They say, I've never worked in a team where everybody would just contribute without, people pulling people in to speak. And it's not speaking over the other people, but really feeling the inner urge to contribute, feeling invited to contribute. That's what you said. Not being invited, just as you stated previously, but feeling invited to contribute. That's a feeling that we have. And if we wanted to give some more tips to leaders and to teams about what they can do to get this psychological safety in teams. What else might it be? I'm trying to collect now, to make a collection of various hints and tips for leaders and teams about psychological safety.
Actually, it came to my mind during our conversation that the first fundamental step is to get to know your team members. I mean, it might sound like something obvious, but many of our clients report that if they have new team members who joined the organization during the past year or two, during the pandemic, then they don't really have that feeling that they know that person, that maybe they didn't have enough time to or opportunity, or they just they didn't see the fact that they also need to talk about those people as persons, because the virtual environment doesn't make it obvious or doesn't make it easy. So I would say that's really step one. We also do that with our new team members in ETTA. We do those one-to-ones, which are actually to get to know the other person well, to know what direction they want to go to, what let's say personal restrictions or they have, or what they like doing personally, what they don't like. So I think that's really useful. That's step one. Get to know your team members.
Spend this little virtual time with them, not only on controlling the progress, but on getting to know the people. That's what I'm getting.
Yeah. I think that would really be the key. And then if we talk about those, and that would be about inclusion, if we talk about those other stages, learner, contributor, and challenger, I think that the learner can also be sort of modeled by what you do as a leader. So if you sincerely ask for feedback and do something about it, if you sincerely show that you are learning new things, that sometimes that you don't pretend to be the perfect leader, that sometimes you learn new things, that sometimes you stumble upon things, that for example, developing that good way of organizing a hybrid team is a challenge for you, that you ask for opinions and so on. I think that still many leaders try to be I don't know what words to use. Perfect. Yeah, perfect. Or try to have that facade of, okay, everything is really under control and I'm perfect. And if you show that it's not true, that you learn, that you ask for sincere feedback, that you experiment, that you make mistakes, then that's the first steps for people to do that. And another fundamental thing is not to punish your people for making mistakes, particularly if they are new joiners. Then they need some space, they need some time. Maybe they need a buddy or a mentor. That's also good practices from onboarding processes to have that learning space.
That's what I'm thinking. Sometimes it all comes to the first question that you ask after you discover that a disaster happened. Do you ask who's guilty or who did it, or do you ask, okay, so what's the reason it happened? What can we learn for the future? How can we avoid it in the future? That's the different type of an approach that people immediately see.
And again, it touches upon agile and retrospective, right? So there's possibilities, there's procedures and methodologies that enable that. And again, the contributor safety. If you invite, if you share just for the sake of sharing, I think that's also when you show that it is okay, that you disclose, that you write about both your, let's say, ideas for the professional part, but if you also disclose your personal part to a degree that's comfortable for you, that you say that, for example, okay, so this week is difficult for me for personal reasons, and maybe I will not be so active on private channels. That could be enough if you don't want to disclose that you have, I don't know, a sick child or or something else. Then if you disclose, then there's a larger possibility that your team members will also disclose. And it's not like overwhelming your team members with your emotions, but just finding that balance.
You know what I'm thinking? The level 2, level 3, even level 4 also, they do require a certain mode of a team operation, because there is an assumption that such conversation take place at all in the team. That there is a conversation about what we can learn from the mistake, and that the team members are invited. That there is a conversation like about how can we approach the new challenge, and that's a team conversation. Sometimes if a team is so busy with doing things only, then it never gives itself the chance for psychological safety on the higher levels, because the people can feel very good with each other, the people can feel included, and they will never reach the other levels because they're only in this doer mode, and the leader is focusing on giving instructions about what the people need to follow. There is no space for a discussion, and a discussion is perceived as a waste of time. So if this is the case, then the team does never give a chance to itself to reach the real high psychological safety. That's a paradox, isn't it?
Yes, it's a real paradox, and it is so easy to get into that loop in virtual work. Many of our clients say that they have back-to-back meetings and so on. I think nowadays more and more organizations are trying to manage that, but that was the reality for the past year or a year and a half. And I think that also some of our clients, they created some really good mechanisms to avoid that. For example, we have that client who have that break between, I think they have like a 2-hour, it's not a break in work, but a break in meetings. They have that slot during the day when they don't arrange any meetings with each other, which allows them to work, to do some deep work.
To have some deep work.
And then also some of them are organizing regular online meetings with that space, be it 15, be it half an hour, for people just, sharing what they have issues with in their personal life at the moment, or there's some fun question, or they are invited to, I don't know, share recipes for quick and tasty breakfast, something that makes them feel closer to each other. And that's the step one that, for example, someone can say, oh, I'm a vegetarian, so I can only I can only share vegetarian recipes. Are you interested? Well, okay, things like that. So that's again simple, but not always easy. Good practice to give some space for this kind of sharing.
So if we kind of summarize what skills are of benefit in teams and in leaders who want to get psychological safety, this would really be about the personal skills, about the empathy, about the skill of observing each other, being in contact, maintaining, regulating the communication in the team, not only one direction, but all various directions in the team. It would be about the skill of communicating, paraphrasing, listening, asking questions. So that's all that comes into this whole package of psychological safety when we think about what can I do on my end to improve it.
Yes. So I'd say that that these are the so-called soft skills. And again, if you are listening to this and you are thinking that, oh, I'm not so very empathetic, or that's really not my cup of tea, then you can just create some little procedures for yourself how to do that. And many of our clients do that. Like, for example, a daily reminder that you need to ask a question to your team about what are they up to. Yeah, because if it doesn't pop into your mind naturally, then you need to sort of supplement it with some tool. Yeah, so you can generally do that.
Or a weekly meeting of a whole team, just reviewing the week, how it went, and not just checking progress, but also connecting with each other. So that's what people do. I met this one team of project managers, and they work globally across various time zones, many of them individually with their own projects. But what they do is they run 1 hour meeting each week, those very busy people, and they use it just to connect with each other, just to exchange, any news, they are not using it. They are not wasting it for updates, because updates are done in the systems, online, in the various progress tracking tools. They don't need a face-to-face. They don't need a meeting to update each other on the progress. They can spend it on the human touch. That's what they did. That's what they do.
Exactly. That's a very good idea to provide space for it. I'm also thinking about one other thing that was quite helpful for us in ETTA, I think, to use a certain methodology. We use FRIS, which is a Polish methodology of cognitive styles, to use some sort of methodology to learn who's got what approach to learning, to communicating, to things like that. We have done that as a team to see what our cognitive styles are. And now it is much easier, I think. Don't you think so, Monika, that now it is much easier we make a lot of fun of it, but we have a lot of acceptance.
We make a lot of fun of it. But that's functionable, that's really helpful, that's really, we can even ask for a certain type of an input when we're looking for something from a certain person. That's very helpful to know these styles.
It's very helpful because then you also know what will help the other person to jump to another, let's say, level of or stage of psychological safety. So the way they need to be invited to contribute or even to challenge or I think that can also be quite useful. So again, we go back to get to know your team, but maybe you can also use a methodology if that's a bit fuzzy for you. Get to know your team.
Yes, like the Strengths Finder with the individual themes, or many other ways to tackle the human diversity. So how would you summarize, Kasia? What's the key message that you would like to highlight?
I think the key message would be that psychological safety is really essential for the teams to be productive, to thrive, not to go into a wrong direction. That I think what can be a relief is that you can identify the 4 stages of psychological safety, and If you feel that it would be quite difficult to aspire to the fourth one, then you can just, try to move step by step or stage by stage. And that although psychological safety is not so obvious in hybrid environments, then you can also use tools, techniques to develop that in your hybrid teams.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Monika. Thank you for inviting me.
The three key takeaways that I am taking from this conversation with Katarzyna are: psychological safety does not always mean the same. We can be on various levels of psychological safety in a team. But the step number one towards psychological safety is always inclusion. That's a very strong point, which I heard in the conversation today. The third conclusion is that lack of psychological safety creates a threat to business sustainability and well-being of individuals, which is equally important. Find all the notes to this episode at www.estepahead.pro/003. That's the number of this episode. At the same website, you can also join a newsletter to get informed about any new content coming up from me, both podcasts and articles. You might also find A Step Ahead by Monika Chutnik in the LinkedIn and leave the mark follow so that you get informed about all the new content that's coming up. Talking about this specific human eye on what we are as a team, as a people, and also on the responsibility of a leader, I would strongly recommend another episode which I have recorded in the A Step Ahead. And it's a conversation with Kinga Jaśkowiak from Hewlett-Packard Enterprise about human-centric or human-centered leadership. You will find it at estepahead.pro/001, the very first episode of A Step Ahead. Thank you very much for being together today. Take care and goodbye.